know who I am, my name is Misty Pierce. I'm friends with Martina, who owns the Dilly Dilly, and Christy Zitto. She could not make it here tonight. I'm going to be honest with you. I've only read some articles and watched some videos, so I don't know much. I'm here just like you are to learn and listen. So I'd like to welcome Ammon Murphy.
Thank you. So I read some articles and watched some videos too, and I hate myself now. They were from MSN or something like that. You know.
Oh boy.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I appreciate it. I am grateful for this little place we have to meet, and for your hospitality, and for getting people together. And hopefully we'll have a good conversation here, and when you leave you can have a much better idea of who I am and what it is that we face here in Idaho. And if you are so inclined, then you can go and tell your friends. Someone told me, in fact, it might have been, no, it wasn't Christy. It was somebody that was in the legislature or something. Anyway, he said that every person that you contact, they'll tell 7 people, right? Which kind of makes sense, because the whole sales thing is like you have to contact somebody 7 times before they'll actually, buy something. But anyhow, I'm just going to tell a little bit about myself, so you understand who I am. I have lived in Idaho for 7 years, almost 7 years. Moved here in 2015, early 2015. I grew up on a ranch in southern Nevada. My dad still ranches there. That ranch has been in operation since 1877. So my family went into that area and homesteaded that and began to run cattle on the foothills of the Bunkerville Mountain. And they went in there at a time that no one wanted it. No one wanted it. I'm just going to keep spanning because I don't want people to, think that I forgot that you're back there. So in fact, maybe I'll come around from the. How about this? Is this okay?
That's good, man.
Okay. That way I don't have to turn around so much. So, they came in there in 1877, and no one wanted it. It's a very arid place. It takes about 100 acres to produce enough feed for 1 cow. And because it's desert. It's about, it's not sand, but it's about as arid as you could get before it turns into sand. So but they found several springs along the mountains, the Bunkerville Mountains there. They found springs, and they were able to dig and to get those springs to produce water. They were artesian springs, and they captured those waters in water troughs that they built out of, basically homemade concrete. And then throughout my great-grandfather, grandfather, and my father's years, they have developed those waters where they piped them all over the desert, over a 30-mile span. And that's where we run cattle. And those springs are the lifeblood of the ranch. And actually cattle, especially certain times of the year, which actually this is one of the times of the year that the cattle will actually get really fat on the desert. Because they'll eat the shrub, they'll eat some cactus, they'll eat the Joshua pears, they'll eat the prickly pears. But then if they get a little bit of grass underneath the brush and the cactuses, then they'll get really fat on it. And they'll do really well. But it takes a lot of area for them to live, and they can't go so far for water. We got the Virgin River runs through the valley, and that's way down the bottom of the valley, and then the only other place for water is those springs, and then we piped it all throughout the desert. And I remember growing up, we had an old Ford tractor, and we had this little system where we could put water in, or a pipe in the ground. You see the big ones that do it, and they have a ripper and it goes right in the ground. And we're able to do that and hardly even disrupt the ground too much. And we, growing up, all throughout my life growing up, we were always putting pipe in the ground. and diverting that water all over. And my dad is a producer. He doesn't ask for anybody's help. He doesn't want anybody's help, you know. Of course, he loves when his family helps, but he doesn't want the government's help. And he found a way, and my family found a way to make a living there. It's not a great living, but we've been doing it for generations, and he doesn't want to do anything else. He's 75 years old now, and now I have a little sister and a brother that's involved in the ranch, and it's about all it can produce is enough for a couple families. But my dad says that he's a producer, and that he produces a commodity for the American people, and he calls that red meat. I produce red meat. That's my contribution to, and my product to the American people. And he wants to do that without, you know, the government subsidizing him. He wants to be able to be free to do that, as his father and his grandfather and great-grandfather did, at least my great-grandfather. So that's a little bit of my history. How I grew up. I grew up on that ranch. I felt very free. We were able to, you know, ride horses, ATVs, you know, all over the desert for miles and hundreds, you know, I would say hundreds of miles, but from our ranch house to the bottom of the ranch is actually 80 miles. So it's a lot of open country. And it's enclosed because you got the Lake Mead, which is one of the largest man-made reservoirs. It's huge, right? And then you got the Colorado River, which is Grand Canyon, and then you got the Bunkerville Mountains. And there's only one road, and that's the little road that goes right past the ranch house. And so there's not any cities, there's not even towns. There's very few people that live out there. You know, I could name them on one hand, actually less than one hand, of people that even have homes, and they're mostly old homesteads out there. So we were able to, you know, have that land to run on, to be able to, you know, enjoy, and I felt very free growing up. And I think I was able to experience freedom in a different way than a lot of people do because of that experience. Now, also, we spend a lot of time on horses, and to me, like, people will say, well, what? Like my daughters will say, well, I want to go horseback riding. And I'm like, well, where else are you going to ride a horse? You're going to ride it on his neck? You're going to go horse neck riding? You know, I'll tease them, because to me, riding a horse was work. I don't enjoy riding a horse. I know that might sound bad, I don't, because that to me was just work. We spent days and days and days and days traveling, riding, you know, all over the desert with horses. And when we would work, when we work our horses, we had to have 2 horses for one man, because you couldn't ride them day after day the way we rode them and in the terrain and the area we rode them. So you had to have one horse you would ride one day, the next horse you'd ride the next day, and you'd alternate them, because it was work. It was a lot of work. And so I just trying to give you a little bit of a picture of how I grew up. And why? Because I want you to know who I am. I want you to know how I grew up, so that you can understand maybe what makes me. Come on in.
You have to start over.
Okay, yeah, we're going to start over now. So, just so you know, because I'm here. I mean, I'm here to gain your trust. That's why I'm here. That's why, you know, I want you to, when you leave here, I'm hoping that we've had enough of a conversation that you can feel comfortable about supporting me as governor, and that you can know my background, kind of where I come from, and some of the things that I've done. And then, of course, we want to have a good conversation about what's happening in Idaho. So then when I was about 15 years old, I think I was 15, I might have been 14, but I think I was around 15 years old. My dad had a conversation with me, and he said, basically, this ranch isn't big enough for both of us. And I was, you know, it wasn't because, you know, we were going to have a shootout or anything like that. Although we did have some pretty good knockdown dragouts. All of us did, you know, on the ranch, working together all the time. You know, we had some pretty good ones, but it was either, you know, it seemed like, because I grew up with, I had 6 brothers, and then I had an older sister, and then some younger sisters came later, because we have a pretty big family. But, so it was like we would go 6 months and just really have a good relationship. We're always looking after each other, looking after each other, making sure that we were good brothers. But then, about every 6 months, it seemed like we just had a full knockdown dragout, right? I think that's how boys kind of operate a little bit, right? So, and my dad would, he would kind of get involved in those sometimes, you know. So, anyway, so he wasn't saying that the ranch isn't big enough for the both of us because of any conflicts. It was because it wasn't. He was telling me, look, he has a bunch of kids. I'm right in the middle. And there's probably a good chance that I'm going to have to go off and make a living somewhere else. And he was trying to, out of love, help get that idea in my mind that I'm probably going to have to go out, find another way to make a living, that I'm going to have to leave the ranch, the home that I love, you know, the area that I love, and I'm going to have to figure out how to make it on my own and produce enough to trade and so that I can feed my family. Well, so when I was pretty young, but I started a little business, and that went good until I graduated, and then I was still at home. And then I got into eventually, and I went and served a mission. I went and served LDS mission in Minnesota 2 years and came home, and then I went pretty much right into a little business that I thought was going to put me through college, actually. And it was a fleet maintenance business where I was basically changing oil and managing commercial trucks, big trucks. They're mostly like fleet trucks, you know. Somebody would have a fleet of trucks, and I would go and put it on a maintenance schedule, and I started doing that, and I was mobile. And the idea was I was going to do that, and it was going to put me through college, because I was going to Southern Utah University, and it was going to put me through college, and my degree was business management. Well, the business kind of took off a little bit, so I had to decide whether I was going to stay in business and learn how to do business that way, or whether I was going to have somebody teach me in college to do business. And I decided to get out of college, and I just went straight into business. And eventually I met my wife, we got married, and then I moved my business to Arizona. And down there I built one of the largest private fleet maintenance companies in Arizona. It was the largest, there was another company that was pretty close to mine. The largest fleet maintenance company in Arizona. I dealt with, millions of dollars every year, hundreds and hundreds of equipment we took care of, and we did the full maintenance on it. I ended up developing my shop and building my shop into a full service shop, as well as all the maintenance. And I've hired hundreds of employees. I've fired people, a lot of people too. That's the process, as you know, as a business owner. And I dealt with that. And then when I was in business for probably about 17, 18 years, the entire time I was looking for good software to help me run my business. And I couldn't find it at the time. Come on in. I'm just telling my story. So find a seat anywhere. And at the time, I couldn't find any software. I'd been looking for software for that industry for the entire time I was in business. And at the time, I was using like 3 or 4 different softwares. I was using like a financial software, and then I was using this other software to track things, and then I was using another software to print work orders, and it was a hassle. And I had like 10 people in my office just pushing papers, just to make sure everything, and bill and collect, and take all the work orders, and all my technicians were writing all their work orders out on paper, and all the parts and everything. It was all primarily being done between a mixture of paper and like 3 or 4 different softwares. And so at the time, I was pretty successful, and I was like, you know what? I have the resources and the ability. I'm going to build my own software. I'm going to build it for this industry. And so I built it with the idea that other shops could use it too. I didn't build it just exclusive for my shop, but I was able to build it. I hired a developer, and I hired a project manager, and all of us together with my technicians, my customers, my vendors, my office staff, myself, and all of us, we built this really awesome software. It took us about 3.5 years to do it. And we were able to test it, and my customers were involved in it, and everybody was it was a really great project. And it made a huge difference in my business, huge. I mean, I was able to just now take all the energy that we're putting into all of this and put it other ways and provide better service, higher quality service, more service. It was just I was able to not have to be at the office all the time. I could do a lot of remote, managing and that type of stuff. And so it was so good, we decided, and we kind of had the idea at the beginning that we would sell this to other shops. So we began to sell it to other shops. And now it's one of the leading fleet maintenance shop management softwares in North America.
Ooh.
And so that's a little bit of my business background. Again, why do I tell you that? Because I want you to know where my roots are, where my heart is, how I grew up, and all of that. But I also want you to understand that I do have, executive experience, that I've hired and fired hundreds of people, and that I have dealt with millions of dollars in budgets, that I've taken ideas and put them together and made them valuable for somebody with a lot of effort from many different people in different directions. Because I think that those are things that might warrant some trust in a position as someone like governor. So anyway, that's my my business background. Both of the, come on in, have a seat, find a seat. Don't be shy. I don't think anybody bites here.
John does.
I'm just telling my story, kind of my background, and who I am a little bit. And anyway, so since then, I've sold both those businesses. I sold my shop about 2 years ago, and I sold my fleet maintenance business, our software, about 3 years ago. And I bought some commercial buildings in Emmett where I live, and I'm leasing them and kind of developing them. And then I've also become almost a full-time government agitator too. It's it's something that and that wasn't intentional, right? Because it really wasn't. And in fact, so 2014 is when the federal government came down upon my family in Nevada. And at that time, my family had been ranching there for 136 years, or 38 years, I think, 38 years. And we had done nothing different. I mean, it's pretty, we still have to gather our cows like we did in the old days, because you can't just go out in the field and just bring them in. We have to trap them or rope them. And come on in, have a seat. There's a seat there. And so it's not like we have changed. We literally run our operation the same way that my great-grandfather run the operation. Because there's very few ways, other than my dad does have pickups and stuff where he can drive around, and the waters have been more developed, and our rights were very clear. At least we have deed with the state of Nevada. Our grazing rights are tied to the livestock watering rights. It describes right in the watering right deeds that this is a livestock watering, and it even says how many cattle are running on that water. Then the federal government comes in now 38 years later, and says that it's theirs. and that because it's theirs, we can't run on it because they're going to make it a mitigation area for the desert tortoise. And my dad's just like, no, you're not going to do that. You know, and I mean, I'm making a big long story very simple here, but he's, no, you're not going to do that. This is mine. And they said, well, we don't care if you don't want us to do it or not. We're going to do it. And then my dad said, hell no, you're not going to do it. And there ended up being like this, just kind of a battle of wars. There was a little bit of legality into it. And it was just kind of like this standoff of words for like 20 years, from the early 90s to 2014. And Obama got in office, and he was, you know, driven by these extreme environmentalists. And then he also thought that he had enough political power to pull it off. I mean, my dad's just an old rancher in the desert, right? The President of the United States can get this done. And also, they had been building up basically an agency army for the last 20 years. And so, with, you know, all the basic military type equipment, MRAMs, helicopters, you know, all of that. Does he want to set up here?
No,
He wants
Oh, he wants a cookie. I don't blame you. I don't blame you, yeah. Pass them around. So they sent, in 2014, April of 2014, they sent a 213-man army and surrounded my family's ranch and put snipers on the hills, locked down the ranch, and they began gathering the cattle, killing them with helicopters. They built big mass graves with backhoes, and they were just dumping them in there. They were leaving the baby calves out in the desert to die without their mothers, and it was calving season at the time too. They would just run them, and the calves couldn't keep up, and they just, you know, and then they were blocking us from going out. If we even stepped off the paved road, they'd either beat us down, but they would threaten our lives. And there was nothing we could do while they were just literally destroying and decimating my dad's ranch. And the other thing that they were doing was they tried to do it secretly, and we were able to find out. They were taking these backhoes and destroying our water infrastructure. They've been in there over 100 years. Some of this concrete, this old concrete, has handprints in it that are twice the age of my dad, and he doesn't even know who they are, but they'll have their name, and they're in there, and they were destroying those with their backhoes. And ultimately, thankful for modern technology, because people started filming it and posting it on social media. And those videos went viral. And people were very upset with what was going on. And so hundreds and then eventually thousands of people came to the ranch. And they, you know, I'm simplifying this quite a bit, because it was over it took them 10 days to set up their kind of military type operation. And then they were in operation for 7 days. And they were planning on being there for 7 weeks. But ultimately, the people assembled enough and gave them an ultimatum, gave the federal agents an ultimatum. And basically, it was to leave the area and return the cattle that were alive back. And because the federal government had lost the PR battle and had been exposed, and we had a lot of video and all of that, I could go into a lot of detail about how they actually had hired CIA agents to create aliases on Facebook and all of these things, so they can go in and try to control the narrative, because they knew that we were going to say, hey, they have snipers on the hill, they're pointing guns at us, and they were trying to create the narrative that we were lying, that we were not telling the truth. And so ultimately, what happened is the people gave an ultimatum, and that there was so many people, and the pressure on them was so strong that they decided to take that ultimatum, and they left the area immediately. Within an hour, they left the area. I watched 107 federal vehicles with multiple agents in most of those vehicles leave one after one, just in a huge convoy. I watched them leave, and they never came back. And still to this day, they've never been back on the ranch. They sent in contractors to come clean up and got all their stuff. and they've never been back. And we went back to ranching. So then, it threw us in the limelight. I mean, we had international media calling literally and showing up at the house and all over, almost nonstop. Here, literally, we're just a ranching family, right? And now we're internationally known. And it wasn't something that any of us wanted. It really wasn't. It was difficult, still to this day it's difficult, because, I just had an event and there was people from France, there was some people from India, there was, everything seems to be and the reason why, because I asked one time, why the people from France? Because they always seem to there's some media group from France or Germany, and I asked the French television people one time and said, why are you interested in us? I asked him, why would you be interested in it? He goes, well, people in France value land, value property. And I don't know what that means, but they said they value property. And we love our property. And then there was something that was said that was very impactful. And that is, they said, well, the world is interested in what Americans are going to do with their freedom.
Yeah. Right.
That's what they said.
This is the last.
That the world is interested of what the American people are going to do with their freedom. And that's the story, right? For somehow this situation with my family kind of brought that to point. And so anyhow, during that period of time, we went back to ranching. My dad went back to ranching. I went back to Arizona, went back to work, but everything was different after that. Now, everything was different. Even, I had customers for 18 years, and some of them were so loyal to me, and others didn't want to do business with me anymore. And it was just this huge divide from one side to the next, And, friends, even my church, it divided my own ward in our own congregation. I never said anything. I never asked anything. I never promoted anything, right? I never pushed anything on anybody. But everywhere it went, it divided, which has been a blessing in one way, but a curse in another, right? Because it just divided. And go talk to your friends about me, and you'll find the exact same thing will happen to you. And it's just a divide. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the way the reality is, and that's what happened to us in our lives. And so then I decided, well, I want to kind of get free from that. I'm living in Levine, Arizona, and Phoenix has kind of grew up around it. It's just a huge city. 4 million people live in that valley. And I grew up around us, and I did not want to raise my kids in that area because I didn't want to raise them in the city. So we started looking, and we drove all over the western United States during a spring break one time, and we decided we're going to move to Ammon, Idaho. That Idaho was where we were going to be, where we wanted to be, where we felt we could have we could understand and have people that understood us the most is in Idaho. And we felt Ammon was the right place to be, and so we moved there. We moved within less than 2 months. We checked it out in March, and we were there in June. So I guess a little right around 2 months is what it ended up being. And we love it there. But what happened was shortly after I was there, and again I was trying to get away from everything. I was kind of running, and then it seems like I ran right to a hornet's nest because just 2 hours away, a little over 2 hours away, was the Hammond family. And and I don't know if you remember them. The same things by the same type of people were happening to them, but even in a more gross, more obvious way than even us. And I have to admit, I tried to ignore what was happening to the Hammonds. And in fact, people would tell me, and I tell them I don't want to know. And my dad would call because it was on the hearts of a lot of people, and he would say, Ammon, I'm really concerned about this family. And I was like, Dad, don't tell me about them. I don't want to hear. don't you think we've done enough? Don't you think we've gone through enough? And he goes, I know, but I'm really concerned about it. And I think the same thing that's happened to us is happening to them. And then I was laying in bed one night. It was a long day. I remember it was Monday. I had my phone next to my bed. These damn phones, right? My phone next to my bed, and it chimed. And I thought, oh well, I got enough energy to look at one more message. And there was a link in it, and it was a friend of mine that said, hey, check this out. That's all he said. And there was a link, and I clicked on it, and it was an article about the Hammond family. And I began reading. And I didn't sleep that night. I was so upset. And then I kept doing more research. I researched all through the night. I researched all the next day. And pretty much all through the next night. And I told my wife that, and I prayed and tried to understand, and I told my wife that I have to go help these people. I cannot have the voice I have right now and the influence that I could have and not go help these people. I have to go help them. And so I got in the vehicle and I went. I didn't tell them I was coming. I went, I drove right to their ranch and introduced myself, and they were just these awesome salt of the earth people, just like us. They were just people. They were being demonized and attacked. And they were just the salt of the earth American people who had property that were being attacked by these wicked, now what we would call woke people, right? That's all that was happening. And these people have infiltrated our governments, especially our federal government. And these land agencies are clear full of these wacko, crazy, extreme environmentalists. And they're just destroying private property, and they've been doing it all over. Well, the Hammonds were some of the ones that were holding out the longest. And they showed me their ranch, and they spent time with me, and then I went and met the father, or the dad and the mom. And as the son was mostly running the ranch, the Dwight and Stephen Hammond, or Dwight Hammond, who's older, they were still involved, but not as much as they used to be. And I was just so moved by how good of people they were, and how honest they were, and how right they were, and how unjust it was. And if you remember, they had gone to prison for doing what they had every right to do. And then they come home thinking that they finished their sentence, and they came home, and then the prosecutors, U.S. prosecutors, remember, they're trying to destroy them, went back and got their sentence overturned after they had come home and served their sentence. Went and got it overturned by the Ninth Circuit, and was sending them back to prison for the remainder of 5 years. And that was just the beginning of what was happening to them. They had stolen over a third of their ranch. They had water rights that were theirs, deeded with the state, and they had fenced those off. And then when they tried to get open up the fence, they charged them for destruction of federal property. And so these are the things that were going on, right? And so I got involved, and I brought as much attention as I could to it. And at first, I did it through the sheriff, I did it through the county commissioners, I went through the state legislatures, and even the U.S. representatives. And all of them said that what's happening to the Hammond was a miscarriage of justice. But none of them were willing to do a damn thing about it. They just said, well, we can't do anything out of the courts have spoken. I was like, that is not good enough.
Right.
That is not good enough. We have injustice among us. You've admitted it. You have to do all you can. And they were too afraid. And then all of a sudden, they stopped communicating with me. I mean, I'm talking about one day we have this open dialogue, and the next day, nothing. Well, we found out later that the FBI threatened our representatives that if they continued to communicate with me, that they could be complacent in a federal conspiracy.
Oh my God.
And they were too chicken enough to say, look, I don't know who you think you are, FBI, but I'm a representative of the people. This is a republic, right? but they wouldn't. They were afraid. So then I was like on my own. I felt like I was on my own. I mean, I'm communicating this to the people, but like the mechanism to correct things was gone. It was no longer there. And I knew that I knew what I had to do. I knew what the Lord expected me to do. And that was to do all I could to bring justice to this situation. And so I decided, among others that were, involved in this, we decided, well, let's go bring national and international attention to this situation. And how do we do that? Well, let's go into the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge. It's winter time, no one's there. It's abandoned during winter. We'll go in there and we'll just start living and occupying it. We get tons of attention then. So we did.
You did.
Right? We went there, and you know what? You go up on the hill, and almost for a whole month, there was 30 plus satellite trucks for all the main, for all the news media. And constantly we were saying, look, this is an injustice, this is an injustice, this is an injustice. That's what we were saying. And ultimately, on our way, well, the message began to spread like wildfire. The media made it look like we were hunkering down in some federal buildings that we, raided and overtook, and hiding behind the windows with AK-47s in our hands, right? But the reality is that there was hundreds of people a day coming down in, and we were teaching them about the Constitution. We even had an elementary school teacher bring her students to the refuge. Wow. But it was completely opposite of what the media was telling you. And we were winning the battle, the PR battle. We were winning it again. And they knew they could not allow what happened at the Bundy Ranch to happen again. So what does a bully do when he can't communicate well enough to even get his point across? He just uses force. And on our way to a meeting that the people of Grant County, Oregon, organized on their own, including the county sheriff, we were on our way there. The FBI ambushed us, began shooting into our vehicles, literally right into our vehicles, and ended up killing Lavoy Finicum, shot him, and shot him 3 times in the back with his hands in the air, and shot my brother in the arm, and then they arrested us. They threw us in prison, and they charged us in Oregon, and they charged us in Nevada, and we fought 2 major trials. The federal government spent $100 million trying to prosecute us. And we beat them in Oregon on all charges. We're acquitted on all charges with a Portland jury. And then we go down to Nevada, and meantime, we're literally suffering. They never once let us have any physical contact or see our family. Not one time in those 2 years. And most of the time we spent it in solitary confinement, in terrible situations. And that because they wanted to break us. They wanted to create such a disadvantage that we would not be able to beat them. And yet, literally by the grace of God, we beat them again in Nevada. And we walked out of there without even misdemeanors. We're home to our families. And then something amazing happened. Because we brought so much attention to the injustice that happened to the Hammonds. And it was such a national and international, spotlight that President Trump pardoned the Hammonds. Yeah. And they went home too. Nice. And so I will always be grateful for President Trump doing that. Because it was an injustice. And we were finally able, but it took a heavy price. It would cost a lot to bring that much attention so that a mechanism like a presidential pardon would be justified. But we were able to do it. So anyhow, I'm kind of getting long. I want to talk here more than just about what I am here and what I've been doing. But I ultimately came home. I didn't want anything to do with government. I don't want anything to do with anything. I just want to be left alone, take care of my family. I refused to even register to vote. I didn't want anything to do with government. And I kind of stayed in that mode, and then 2020 come around. And I began to see patterns in our governor and the Idaho government, which I didn't know very much about, I began to see these same patterns that I saw before. And I realized that, look, I cannot just sit around. I cannot just be, leave me the hell alone-ist. You know, although I wanted to be that, I want to just leave me alone. Let me live. Let my family live. But they're not going to. They're not going to let you. You can't be that. I promise you. I've tried many, many times. And so I began to unite people and rally people, and I built more software, communication software, and we organized the People's Rights a network. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And now there's over 63,000 people in it. And we started pushing back all over the country. And we have made a difference. We have made a difference. We've made a difference in many different states, including Idaho. And anyway, and then the elections, the gubernatorial election is coming around, and I'm watching who is entering the race, hoping that someone's going to actually enter it that's really going to fight, that's really going to make a difference, because it's going to take somebody who's really going to stand against the establishment, the corruption that's going on. And it's pretty deep here in Idaho, way deeper than I ever thought. Much, much more rooted and much more dangerous than I ever expected. And one by one I saw, Ed Humphreys, like, who is he? And then I was like, Janice, I thought maybe she will. But then I look at 2020 and I'm like, man, she did nothing. She did nothing. The most she did was write a letter. She wrote a letter to the governor saying, when are you going to end the order? And that was about it. Come on in, have a seat. Right here's a couple, or grab a chair and slide over. I'm just telling this long story. So, I began to, see, and I had no confidence in anybody that was running. I had no confidence that they were going to make and secure liberty for my children, my grandchildren in Idaho, and the rest of the people. And so I, felt inspired to run. And there's a little bit more background to that than I'm letting off right here, but I know what kind of battle it's going to be. I have been involved in this battle. I know what kind of grit it's going to take. I know that you have to risk every day in court when we were in trial. We had to literally walk on the line of contempt of court every single day, because that is the only way that you can get in truth in front of the jury. Otherwise, it's suppressed. And I know that literally, as a governor who's trying to strip down the powers of the bureaucracies, the establishment, you are going to have to walk on the line every single day. And that is not easy to do. And I'm talking about the line of, like, are they going to throw me in jail tomorrow? But if someone's willing to do that, the good that can be done in Idaho, because the people of Idaho are primarily good, conservative people. But we don't understand that that's not what we have in our bureaucracies. We don't have that in our bureaucracies of the state. Mostly the executive branches. They're not. Who are they? They're the people you despise. A lot of them. I'm not saying all of them. They're the people you despise. I mean, go and look at the GOP leadership, and just look at each one of those people over the last, decade. I mean, you've got one who was arrested for soliciting sex in an airport. You've got others that are caught going into the bathrooms in high school, girls' bathroom in high school. I mean, I could go on and on and on. These are the leaders of the GOP in Idaho. In Idaho. And they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep their power. They'll do almost everything they can. And what they're doing is that they have perverted the Republican Party in Idaho. So that they've perverted it. They become the fake Republicans. Right? They've made it so that the Republican Party, everybody's like, well, I vote Republican. But what's happening is have we ended abortion? Have we lowered taxes? Have we minimized the size of government? Have we brought accountability to government? All of the platforms that the Republican Party in Idaho put forth. This is a good platform. This is a righteous platform. But they're just the opposite. Except they're running with an R next to their name. So all of us good people think that, well, that's who we vote for because they're really good people. And that's why Idaho, in many ways, is entrenched deeper in establishment and corruption than other states because we're so Republican. Well, we have to make a decision in Idaho. Are we Republican or are we conservative? Right? That's the decision. Are we conservative or Republican? Because what we've seen, and I'm gonna stop talking here in just a little bit, I promise. Then we'll ask questions, or I'll answer questions you can ask. So, but what we see here is, let's look at Oregon. Okay, it's a good example because if we continue the path we're going on, we will be pretty much exactly like Oregon.
Right.
And it's not going to take very long. It's not going to take very long. Because everything is, since 2020, everything is excelled now. Everything is faster. Okay? So, what happened in Oregon? Well, Oregon, anybody from Oregon here? Okay. How long did you live in Oregon?
I was there until I was 18 and I joined the military.
Okay. Was Oregon not a very conservative state?
It was.
It was an extremely conservative state. God, family, country, people willing to fight and stand up for it. It was a beautiful, beautiful land, tons of natural resources, prosperous, right? And correct me if I'm defining it or if I'm not characterizing it. It was.
It went
right.
They took the water,
And
they took
so exactly. So it was conservative, ultra conservative action. So what happened? Well, what happened was it went from conservative to Republican to this perversion of Republican to liberal and then Democrat. The Republicans let it right in. These this perversion of republicanism leads it right in to liberalism and then being taken over basically by liberals. You call them Democrats, whatever you want to call them. I mean, I don't know, not all Democrats are liberals, but it kind of seems to be going that way, right? But that's what happened. To where now, I mean, you know, I don't even want to try to describe Oregon. It's too hard to describe. You know, I mean, you guys know. I'll just say you know, right? And that's where we're headed. And where are we at in the stage? We're into the perverted Republican stage right now. Right on the verge. Right now they're shipping people from Washington, Seattle to Boise because Seattle can't handle all they don't have enough government housing for all their mental and all the subsidized and all that. So they're actually sending them to Boise. They have contract and actually paying the city of Boise to take them. Right? That's just you know, one little thing. Our policies right now that are being made, that are being put forth, mostly in the executive branch, in the agencies, they're following the same things that Oregon followed. You know, welfare, you know, overabundance of funding in this and in that. You know, that's what's happening. Becoming basically the government, the bureaucracies are becoming like a jobs program. Where you go there to get a good job. You don't go there to produce a service for the people or be responsible for anything. You go there because it's a good job. Right? Well, so that's where we're at. And so I've placed that right on your lap. Each of your laps. I want you to, you know, put that on your lap and realize that that's where we're at. Now what are you going to do with it? You know? What are we going to do with it? Because it's going to take a hell of a fight to keep that from going in the direction that it is going to take us, which is Oregon, Washington, California, Nevada. I'm from Nevada. when I was growing up, never would I've ever thought that the most conservative state in the Union, Nevada, would ever become the liberal cesspool it is today. Right? I mean, never. But everybody got shoved in the city. Right? And it dominated the rest of the state. There's reasons for that. We can talk about that if we get a chance. And then they did the exact same thing that Oregon and Washington and California, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado, all of those have done, right? And we are right on the verge, right here in Idaho. And so, yeah, you know what? I admit, maybe two years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been a good candidate. Or maybe 10 years or 8 years in the future, if we get this thing corrected, I would probably be a good candidate. But I am right now. I am a good candidate right now. Why? Because I'm willing to fight. And I can identify the problems, and I'm willing to put myself in the way, in harm's way, to fight. I would rather not. I'd rather go home to my family. I told Wendy on the way here, best thing that could ever happen for me is I'd lose this election. It is. I don't want to win. I need to.
Right.
I feel like I need to. So anyhow, give you a little bit of background about myself. Bring my excitement level down now, and let's have a conversation. I want to hear your concerns, and I'll answer anything. You notice you did fill a little card when you come in, and you don't see my campaign manager going through them and say, "Oh, look, he can answer this one." Oh yeah, that's a good one. Right? That's not what we're doing here. I would like to answer your question. I'll be honestly. Okay, go ahead. The excitement.
Mr. Bundy, my name's Brad Bowen. I lived in Idaho most of my life, most of my 51 years. I lived in a mountain home for 30. And my first question to you was going to be, why'd you move to Idaho? But you covered that. I was, like some of the other people in here, your notoriety precedes you. But I didn't know very little about your platform. And I'm reading your card, and I'm like, yeah. But then I'm also going, eliminate property taxes and eliminate state income tax. That sounds good. And then I've got to read, and you say how you're going to do that. And I believe it says expand economic activity. I think I speak for everybody in here. We don't want any more people in this state.
Yes.
We do not want any more people in this state. We already have a problem locally with water. And they are still building houses, and they're going up by the day. And we're going to have a major issue with water around here. So that's my first concern. How are you going to make this, expand the economic activity without a population explosion and a water shortage statewide? I got other questions. You want to answer that?
Yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. Okay, because unfortunately, there is very little. There's not a lot of things we could do to stop people from moving in. Okay. Now I know you don't want to hear that, right? However, listen, hear me out. I'm going to talk about immigration, because we can apply the same principles to whether they come into a country and they're coming into a state. And I am answering your question, so I'm not trying to. If at the end I haven't answered your question, you say you haven't answered my question.
It's okay.
You've been a good politician.
I got several more.
You've been a good politician. You haven't answered my question.
We'll circle back here.
So, because people, when they move to another country or to another state, to another area, it's typically for one of the three reasons. It might be combined, but it's either because they want something, right? They want a handout, they want something given to them, right? They're looking for that handout. Or they're looking for criminal opportunity. And then the third is they are looking for freedom or and an opportunity, and they're looking for prosperity and liberty. Okay, so you have those three. And we're talking about a population challenge, right? Some might say a problem, others might say a challenge, right? Well, out of the three, who do you want coming in?
Number 3.
You want number 3, right? They're going to be good neighbors. They're going to work hard. They're not going to be a burden upon you. You're not going to be having to, be extracted your wealth so that somebody can give it to them, right? You want number 3 coming in. So if we can't, and we don't want laws, I'm telling you, we do not want laws that are saying like you can't move to Idaho or you can't move out of Idaho. We don't want those laws, right? But what we can do is through actions of the state, and I'm going to explain this, free action actually, we can eliminate these 2. Right? So how do you eliminate the one who wants a handout? I got to be careful with my fingers. How do you eliminate the one? What's that?
Send them to Nevada.
No, exactly. Send them to Oregon.
Eliminate welfare.
That's right. Eliminate welfare.
Absolutely.
Man, if I show you the numbers, the statistics of the expense of the health and welfare division and what is allotted, it will blow you away. Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Are they all the same?
So yeah, right? So then all of a sudden, not only do people not come into Idaho, they're like, don't go to Idaho. They don't give nothing away for free. Go to Oregon. Oregon has the largest food stamp program in all of the country.
Let people get there.
In all the country. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to come up. Just grab. We could talk. So you see what I'm saying? It kind of makes sense, right? But like I said, not only will they not come here, but they also will leave.
Right.
There will be an exodus if all of a sudden you stop the welfare. Because it's huge, even in Idaho. It's huge. I mean, I can look them up. I really need to have them reference. I've been doing a lot of study. I'm going to do a virtual town hall on it sometime soon, right? But it's huge. Imagine what that does for us. Look, they leave. Our taxes drop, substantially. I mean, huge. I'm talking about a third of the budget. A third of the budget, of the overall budget of the state of Idaho.
Is welfare?
Health and welfare. Yeah. It's actually over a third. It's like 38% or something like that. Okay? That's coming out of your pocket. Okay? So that's how you stop those people from coming. Then you have those who want to come here for criminal opportunity, which is not huge in Idaho, right? But it's still, it's not going to cause a mass exodus in or out. But you have to have justice in a state. You have to make it so that people say, look, just don't go to Idaho to steal a car. It's not worth it. They actually chase you down. They actually make you pay the victim back.
And they will shoot you.
And they will shoot you, right? Don't go to Idaho. I mean, go to Oregon. You can go to Oregon and steal up to $900 of any business you want, and they can't even call the cops.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Yeah. So go to Oregon, right?
Don't get what you want,
Right.
so you burn the building
And
down and you don't get
let Oregon burn down, because they're doing it to themselves. And the good Oregonians, that's right, is that Oregonian? Is that how you say it? The good Oregonians, well, come to Idaho, just don't come to Mountain Home. Right?
Right.
They don't have enough water.
I was going to ask you about that. Greater Idaho, how do you feel?
Well, let me ask here. Hold that question. Have I answered your question?
Yes.
Okay. So what's another one? And then hold on to your question.
You wait your turn, Joe. I was here first. So.
He's like the guy that said he waited in line that eats all the donuts.
Yeah. I own a business. We've run a property management business for about 14 years, and I really like what you said about the restoration and restitution laws, because I have never lost a small claims against a prior tenant. Never. Never hired a lawyer. Never hired a lawyer either. They didn't have to. But getting a judgment doesn't mean you're going to get the money unless you chase them down and garnish their wages. I told my sister years ago, I wish they'd bring back indentured servitude. I know that don't make me popular, but that would be a way to get people to pay what they owe you. As the court has said, you owe this person money, you need to pay it. But then the court doesn't enforce anything on it. You have to chase them down. Can you please explain your restoration and restitution law?
I'm gonna do it by principle.
Sure.
So, what has happened, so our country was built upon restitution and restoration laws, okay? It was not built upon a system of incarceration. It was not. And I'm gonna give you something that might be surprising to you, maybe not, but the United States incarcerates more people by 3 times any other country, okay? And guess what states incarcerates more people per capita than any other state in the Union? Idaho.
You gotta be kidding me.
I'm not.
There's
Idaho.
no grass to run on.
I'm not.
You can
Okay.
be something on the street, you drive
So,
on the street,
I'm going to define justice. I don't know why we think we have to throw people in jail for everything, right? But, so I want to define it, because a lot of times conservatives have a hard time with this because they think, because of the criminal justice thing I just talked about, like don't come here and commit crime, right? So you have to understand what crime is and what justice is. So I'm going to define it a little bit, and I'm going to answer your question, hopefully, by doing this. Because justice is making the wrong right.
Yes.
That's what justice is. So when we talk about our justice system, right? Well, shouldn't it be a system that makes the wrong right?
Yes.
Well, who was wrong?
Well, that depends.
Okay, but let's just take a scenario, right? Someone stole.
Street tickets or actual crimes?
Well, I understand that, but I'll get to that. Let's hold that in your pocket. You're going to spoil this.
You're after me.
Okay? You're going to spoil this. I gotta lead into it, right? So, who is, if there's a wrong, right? Who was wrong? Then there has to be a victim, right? And if that victim was wrong, let's say they stole my cell phone, which I actually have a close story to that, and I'll sum this up with that. Someone stole my cell phone. Well, now I don't have my cell phone. I need it, right? Probably the best thing that ever happened to me, but I need it, right? And plus, I paid a lot of money for the stupid thing. Well, someone stole it, and now they're keeping me from using it, and I have to buy another one or another. Well, the justice system, our criminal system, should catch that person if they can catch them, and then require them to restore back to me the damages, which is my phone or something exactly comparable, plus the damages it cost me by not having it. Those are called punitive damages, right? And that is what the law is supposed to do, and what the law used to do. They didn't put the people in prison. No, the people need to be out making sure that the victim got restored the damages. And the law wasn't making money on it. The law was just making sure that the perpetrator brought justice to the victim. And guess what? During the process in which the victim is restoring the damages back the perpetrator is restoring damages back to the victim, what's happening to the perpetrator, to the criminal? They're learning a lesson. They're being rehabilitated. Oh my goodness. And it didn't cost billions and billions of dollars. They're finding out how hard it is to make that, or to buy that phone. Right? And how hard it is for the person not to have it. That's what's happening. It's direct rehabilitation. And then they're going to go, hey, it's just not worth it in Idaho to steal an iPhone. I'm going to send it, and I already know I can work and make it. I can make it. I'll buy my own iPhone. I'll just go do it. I already did it once, right? I'll go do it again. Now I know how. And the law should facilitate that. And it could happen in many ways. It could happen on different levels, and I could go into that in a lot of detail. But kind of to end up right here, look, what we are doing is the state is punishing in almost all, well, I shouldn't say all cases, in the majority, by far the majority cases, they're punishing people who, when there is no victim. There is no victim.
The state is the victim.
Well, so I'm gonna give you a scenario. This is a real-time scenario. They do say the state is the victim, by the way. But I'm gonna give you a real life. So I was telling you about my business in Arizona. Well, I was not very far away from, who have heard of Sheriff Joe Arpaio with Tent City, right? Tent City. I was literally, I could see Tent City from my business. It was only like a quarter-mile away. And, well, they would release their people, and then they needed a ways to get home. Well, just outside my business on the street was a bus stop. So they, a lot of times would come there, and we ended up putting garbage cans out there because there was always trash, and once in a while we would help people, and if they need to use the restroom and stuff, that's fine, you know, because it's just being a good neighbor. Well, one time, a lady came in, used the restroom, and one of my technician's tablets, because remember we had this awesome software now, right? We're all using paperless, and she swipes it. We didn't see her, had no idea, you can't find it, right? Well, anyway, that same day, so she got out of jail, swipes my thing, and gets arrested the same day. For another crime. Okay, yeah. Well, they go through her stuff, and they see that they have my tablet. On the front, it's locked, and it says Valley Fleet Service and my phone number, so they call me. And I was like, oh, I've been looking for that thing it might have been the next day. But anyway, it was within a day or two. I think it was the next day. Anyway, we've been looking for that thing. And I said, you know, I'll come down and get it. And the detective says, oh, you can't come get it. I was like, why? We really need it. We depend on that thing. I mean, my technician's entire work and life is in that thing right now. He really needs it. Well, it's evidence. I'm like, well, it's evidence. I go, that's fine, then take a picture of it and I'll come down and get it. No, we can't. And so they never, ever let me have that back. I never got it back. And so they used it as evidence, then they end up selling it in a sheriff's cell. Right? Yeah, no, that's what they do. I know with all the evidence, and so, anyway.
I have firsthand knowledge that that's actually what happened, because if I had gone to fight for the wrongdoing of this city on me, on my firearm, that they held 20 days over their allotted time, I probably would have never seen that gun back.
Yeah. Yeah, and I called on it every day for like 5 or 6 days, and finally, I mean, I'm a busy business owner, right? I can't keep chasing this thing down. I ended up replacing it, and he had to get all of it new and updated, and all the hassle of that, and the stuff he lost, and you know, that's, so then I had one more, and I'll be real quick, because I think we've made the point, but I had another where I had an employee who, because we had a program where if you work for us for so long and this, that we will have a tool program where we buy the tools and then they slowly pay us off. And then they end up with this really nice set of tools. Well, anyhow, the guy had previously had a drug problem, but he had got over it and ended up being a pretty good employee, and we ended up investing in him. As soon as we get him all these tools, it wasn't 2 months later, all of a sudden he just disappears, and the tools disappear. So anyway, I report it, and amazingly enough, the detective, they hunted it down, they found it. They went to multiple different pawn shops, because I had a full list and serial numbers and all that. These were high-end tools, you know. It was a $5,000 package of tools. And they hunted, and they got most of them back from these pawn shops. And I go, that is amazing. I can't believe you guys found all these tools. It was impressive. I said, I'll come down and get them. No, it's evidence, right? And still to this day, it's an ongoing case, but it's been about 4 years now, 5 years. I still haven't got those tools. And I don't think they sold them. I don't know. I think there's still evidence. Every once in a while I hear about it. It's been an ongoing case. And I don't even know what happened to the employee. I don't know if they charged him or whatever. But you see, it's not justice.
No.
No.
It's actually the state creating another victim.
Justice should be-
Double victim, right? And so we have to, and long answer, sorry.
No, it's okay.
At least we're doing question and answer, right? I'm not just telling my own story. But we have to restore, we have to go back to the restitution-based penal system and get away from the incarceration base. Did you know it costs $37,000 to $38,000 a year in Idaho per inmate? That's $8,000 to $9,000 more than the median income. Imagine that. Why do we do it? We're not.
We ship a lot of them out of state to the
Well,
Idaho's too, and that's
That's,
expensive.
it is. It's expensive and it's unjust, again, because now you're sending, anyway, I could go on because I lived in there for 2 years. It is a criminal institution. What I mean by that, a university. It is how to be a criminal. So you get this young kid that might have made a mistake, they throw him in prison, and he comes out 4 or 5 years later, a full-fledged criminal with all his buddies and his friends. He knows all the stories, he knows exactly how he's going to do it, and he's disenfranchised with his family and his friends.
Yep.
He comes out, the only people he knows and has a relationship are those that are criminals, and he goes right back into it somehow. And we just paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for him to be in prison, and he comes out a better criminal.
Yep.
That's the reality. It's insanity. It's failed in every way. And I believe as governor that the power is within that office to make a huge difference in this. Huge. And so that's why I plan on taking that back. Okay, next question. Okay, right here.
Well, I had asked you about Greater Idaho and bringing some of those conservatives under the Idaho umbrella. How do you feel about
I love that idea. Those people are just like us. And what's happened to them, and a lot of it is because, most of it is, the problem is because of the federally controlled, land. Like Harney County, it's 98% federally controlled. I mean, they got 2% of their land that, it's crazy. And they can't survive that way, right? And then the state won't fight for them. And all they end up doing is, I say it's like the Hunger Games syndrome. And I'm getting pretty good at telling these stories, guys, by the way. So, but what you got is the capital city, which in this case would be Portland, right? And then you got all the districts, which is all the rural area of Oregon, and they're just pumping their resources and keeping the capital city where they can be, basically not have to work, and they can have all their little games, and they can dress up like they're gay, men can paint their faces, and they can act weird, right? While the rest of everybody else is working hard and producing, and most of that wealth is taken away from them. And that's what's happening. They're like, man, this is terrible. We want to join Idaho. We believe Idaho. And you know what my belief is? My belief is it is extremely difficult for them to come to Idaho. But you want to know what I really believe? I believe it'll happen. I don't know if it's going to happen soon, but I believe at some time that Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington will join Idaho. Will be actually part of Idaho. I really believe that.
What would
So
you?
right here, and then.
I was just gonna add,
Okay.
I don't know if any of you listen to Nate Sheldon, on
Once in a while.
talk radio. Anyway, I had to laugh the other day talking about Oregon coming to Idaho, and he was, going, Baker City, Idaho. And all of that, I mean,
I can
everybody,
totally see that.
he says, and somebody says something, he said, well, I just have to see how it sounds.
That's awesome.
I was just gonna say, and I don't know if you've even thought about this type of thing, but how would you sell that to the legislature? The legislatures of each state. in
So
order to
the
influence that.
challenge is this, constitutionally, is that
Legislatures.
you have to have the Idaho legislature approve it, the Oregon legislature, and U.S. Congress. You have to have all three of them approve it. So that's a lot of politicking.
Well, we got quick.
Oregon's not gonna,
It's coming.
the Oregon legislature's not gonna want it because
No.
they
That's where all the money
they
goes.
live off of them. It's like, you know, it's like letting District 12 in Hunger Games just, oh, okay, you can join somewhere and somebody else. Right? Which, so that's gonna be a challenge. But I do know that people have already approached and they've already presented it to the Idaho legislature. And the Idaho legislature thinks it's a great idea as long as it's done right. And I have no idea what Congress, I don't think there's been anything proposed there. But I don't know how it'll happen. But I do believe, I don't know why, it's just I believe that at some point down the road, those people are gonna say, look, we refuse to be part of what's going on over there. And also, they can't survive. They will never survive under the scenario. They can never thrive, they can never prosper, they can never, you know, have a better place to live and all that under the scenario they're in. Because why? Because Oregon is an infestation of liberalism that is so deep in welfare and corruption and just filth. And they're funding it. The rural areas are funding it. They have to because they're the producers, right? You don't get to eat for free in this world.
Come on.
You either take it from somebody else or you make it yourself.
Amen.
Because you don't eat for free in this world. The Lord made it that way. God created it. He said, by the sweat of your brow, unless you're a thief, then by the sweat of your neighbor's brow. I think I added to that, but that's the reality, right? So, great question. Yeah.
One more, if I may. Idaho has some of the most, it's got per capita, I think, the most state and public land of any state in the union per capita. Our state also has a ton of rare metals and things like that throughout the state. How do you feel about the utilization of that public land to increase the productivity of the state?
So what's like line 3 or something on the back of the card? Federal land something? Is it 3 or 4 or something like that? You see, it's pretty small.
Yeah, not nice and fair.
Open up that pamphlet right there. You'll see the trifold.
Implement restoration.
Go ahead and the trifold, look at it, you'll see it's
5, take back all of Idaho's land.
Yeah, take that, okay. So, and there's a map on there, look at that, all the red on that, if you open the trifold, you'll look at the red, is all the federally controlled land in Idaho. Okay? 61 to 63%, right around there. It's not the highest, it's the third highest. Nevada's the highest with 89%, and Utah's the second highest with 69%. And Idaho is right behind it. So, I'm going to answer your question. But again, I'm a little long-winded, so thank you for being patient with me. I'm just trying to articulate the point enough that we can all see and agree, or openly disagree, right? So, I have an apple orchard. I have 240 apple trees, and then I have 135 other apple or trees, cherries, peaches, and pears. Okay. And I grew up on a farm. We did have a farm, and we had a ranch as well. So we farmed 160 acres. And my entire life, I've seen what is called the increase of the earth, which is where I can take an apple seed, plant it in the ground, it can grow, but I gotta take care of it. It's gotta have water. It's gotta have soil, and gotta take care of it. It'll grow. And it'll produce thousands and thousands of apples off of one seed. Well, man can't make that happen. That's God that made that happen. He put it in order, right? And that's how He gave us a way to live, to eat, and to increase, and actually to be wealthy if we use it right and take care of it right, where we can increase, where we can, what the founders would call pursue happiness. Okay? Well, that's called the increase of the earth. If you don't have earth, or if you have to get permission from somebody to plant something or to get water, and it's restricted or controlled away from you, you can't use the increase of the earth. You can't. And it's where all wealth comes from. It's where, it's where our food comes from, it's where our clothes come from, it's where our buildings, it's where our phones, There is nothing that we benefit from or have in this life that did not come from the earth. Right? And there's a great understanding of that among the wicked, to get in control of what comes out of the earth, what we use to stop that from happening. There's a reason for that. I won't go into it right now. But we have to understand that right now it literally is like so you got 63% of Idaho's land federally controlled. And I say federally controlled because it's not federal land.
No.
We have to stop saying that. It's not BLM land. It's not Forest Service land.
Public land.
It's public.
It's the people's land, right? It was here for the people. God created the earth for the people. He didn't create it for some agency or for some environmentalist group, right? He created it for the people to use and to benefit from it. And it's where wealth comes from. So it's literally like saying that you have $1 million in your bank account, but 630,000 of it you can't use, right? It's even more than that when you look at it, because it stops the ability for us to increase. Now, another figure is that federal government is controlling 72% of our subsurface mineral rights. Okay, that would be your minerals, your gold, silver, natural gases, all of these things, right? That we live off of, that we benefit from. And to the point where we can't even really build our own homes. Like, why does it make sense that we're buying products, forest products, outside the state or even outside the country?
Come on.
Pumping it into Idaho when we have some of the most reserved forests and they're burning up.
Right.
Why are they burning up? Because we don't use them. Makes so much sense, right? But the environmentalists have a no-use policy. They're trying to balance the species. And they don't look at humans as anything different than just a species. And so they want to stop humans. They think that humans have advanced intellectually, evolved intellectually. And so that their duty is to balance the species, to make sure that the humans don't have an advantage over the other species. So they have a no-use policy. That's what their policies are. Anyway, so there's some other very negative things that are going on right now in Idaho because of this federally controlled land. And I'm going to explain and try to explain it really fast. I haven't been able to do anything fast before when it comes to these conversations. But I'm going to do it pretty quick here because one is we have an affordable housing crisis, okay? And it's a supply and demand thing, right? Well, part of that problem is because 63% of our land is not part of the supply, okay? And so you're talking about, so what are we doing? We're building in our private property areas, which all of that at one time was what? It was farm ground. Developed, irrigatable, mostly leveled farm ground, right?
Sucking the wells dry.
And you can't replace that ground. You can't, right? So what's the #1 industry in Idaho? It's agriculture, right? So we're destroying our #1 industry. Why? Because we're building on our agriculture land because we don't have enough supply. What would be the answer? Just build on the hills, right? Quit building. Well, but you're not going to stop the building. I wish we could say we're not, but we're not.
Close the border and not let anybody else in?
Yeah, we can just build a wall, right? Build a wall. Okay. So, but why don't we build on these hills and these areas that are great around these cities and towns to build up there instead of building on our agricultural land? Let's do that. We need to do that. We have to do that. Otherwise, we are going to destroy the #1 industry in Idaho, agriculture.
The Johnny Do-Gooders want to keep it for the bicyclists.
Yeah, I'll let them have their path, whatever. They go right through the beautiful homes we build up on the hills, right? With our forests, so they don't burn down. So you've got, those are the three problems, or I'm going to explain the third. So you've got affordable housing crisis, because supply and demand, we're building on our agriculture. And the third one, we've talked about a little bit already, we're driving the people into the cities. And so they're building up rather than building out. And when you do that, you get congestion, you get, smog, and the people lose their conservative identity. It's proven. Because they don't experience the earth, the increase of the earth. They don't even have grass that grows in their front yard. They don't own anything, right? So it completely changes them. So if we do not fix this federally controlled land problem in Idaho, if we don't fight it, it's the end of Idaho. Eventually. No agriculture or agriculture to the point where it won't be much of an impact. Because you have all houses just in dense populated cities, and you end up with these big cities like Boise that are building up, and they become the political dominant power in the state, and they just control everybody else. And they all vote liberal because what do they think that your eggs come from the back freezer of Albertsons, right? They think your meat is somehow manufactured at Walmart, right?
Synthetic beef is on its way.
Yeah. Good luck. I've had PETA try to sell that garbage. Terrible. So there's your answer. Another long answer, but we have to fix this problem. Now, we also have federal government coming in and claiming something they don't have authorization to claim. And what we have now is whenever a family or anything is caught into that terrible, terrible cycle like my family was, then they're sitting here like, my family doesn't have the resources to fight the federal government.
Right.
And my dad's had to do that his whole life. Literally his whole life. My dad's a very, actually intelligent, productive person. I can't imagine what he could have done with his life if he didn't have to fight the federal government just to hang on to what he has. But he had to. He's had to do it his whole life. And so what was the mechanism put in place so that the little family doesn't have to fight the federal government, the most powerful legal team ever known in the history of man? Got 7,500 U.S. attorneys, and every one of them have a full office and staff of hundreds of people to support them, right? And you want a little ranching family to fight that? With all the resources, they spent $100 million prosecuting my family. $100 million.
Of our tax money.
Of your tax money, yeah. Prosecuting my family. So what's the mechanism that the founders put in place to make sure that that doesn't happen? Everybody know?
The government of the people, for the people, by the people.
Well, you're right. I'm going to get a little more specific. What?
Second two.
Well, yeah, you got the Second Amendment. That ended up being what kind of straightened it out, right? That is but there's several mechanisms in place. But the main mechanism in place was the state was supposed to say, oh no, federal government.
Yep.
They're behind this little families here. They're going to go to work. They're going to be protected, and we're going to fight this battle.
Yeah.
Right? But when you got federal funding, all the state bureaucracies and the governors just, salivating over federal funding, do you think they're going to compromise that funding to protect a little family? No. We have to, because of federal funding. So we have to break that cycle. The design was so that the people could just live free. The county is supposed to protect them, the state's supposed to protect them, the federal government is supposed to protect them from the outside world, right? So that the people can live free and exercise their rights according to the gift that God gave us. That's how it was supposed to be done. And again, something that has to be corrected in Idaho. And for Idaho to remain Idaho, for the people to remain free, the state needs to start doing its job.
Right.
So, right here.
Okay, you've answered pretty much what I wanted to say. He was asking the questions, but I do want to ask, and thank you for what you've done and what you have stood up for. I couldn't even imagine what kind of backbone and what kind of stuff you've done.
Thank
I've seen what they've done, people, to our natural resources. And if you got a country that has no natural resources or a state, you have a third world country. And I know you know that. And they're doing this on purpose, folks. It's part of their plan. I don't know if you've been out much around in the forest. You can drive anywhere in this state and it's burnt up. And they haven't logged nothing of it. Period. There's no more mills here. There's nothing.
And they're locking the roads.
And now they've burned off the rangelands right where I live up here on Syrup Creek. They've burned it all. And they lock it up. They say, well, we're fighting it. They lock it up so the public can't go watch and see. I mean, but what I'm getting at is I know it's public ground, folks. The last time back in the 70s, the 80s, and when you looked at a map, it said public ground. It don't no more. It says Forest Service State, BLM.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay? So if you are governor, what can you do to stop that? And the other thing is being the public ground, I'm a hunter, my son's a hunter, I'm sure a lot of you people are. I trap, I've done it all. If the state gets control of it, I've heard this over and over and over, we can't afford to manage it. And they're gonna sell it off to private. It ain't gonna work. Somebody like me, somebody like you that wants to hunt, do it, you can't. It's in private hands, it's gonna stop. I don't wanna see it. It's public ground, my ears, everybody's in here.
Okay, so
What can you do?
Okay, so great question. Great question. So I want to emphasize what type, how much land we're talking about. Okay? You know the size of an acre, right? It kind of look in your mind the size of an acre. We're talking about 32 plus million acres in Idaho. 32 million acres. It's what the federal government is controlling. Okay? It's a lot. It's a lot of land. And what I'm proposing, and the other thing is, we don't want to just transfer masters. Like, we don't want to just transfer masters from the federal government to the state, right? And just have the same thing happen, right? We don't want the same thing. What's that?
Homesteading.
So what I'm proposing, right? And remember, we need to get and expand, at least get to where we can build on these areas. So I'm proposing that we take some of these lands around these cities and so forth, and these towns, and we expand this and make it available through some disposition act, right? And done at the county level. It might be legislated, there might be some state statutes of how to do that. But so that it's not done through corruption, and it's made sure that it goes to the people's hands and not like a huge corporation and all of that. There's ways to do that. Disposals are nothing new. That's what the Homesteading Act is. That's what the Desert Entry Act is. That's what all these acts were, is acts of getting this land and resources into the people's hands. Because that's the way our country was designed. That's what the Constitution set forth, right? Now, we also love to hunt, fish, hike, camp, do all these things. We love to do that. All of us love to do that, right? And we've established rights over 100 plus years to do that. It's part of what we do, right? And so we want to take a huge amount of this land, that's the areas where we hunt, hit, fish, hike, and all of that, and make it into what we call multiple use land. Okay? Why do I call it multiple use? Because the hiker's hiking, the hunter's hunting, the rancher's grazing, the loggers are logging, the miners are mining. You know, who made most of our hunting roads? It was the loggers, right? Miners, mining in Nevada made all the roads there. You know, I don't know, the 3 trees might still be there that are the three pine trees in Nevada. Actually, northern Nevada has tons of pine trees. Southern Nevada, right? But, so, and multiple use has always been, well, from the very beginning, has been the way that the West has taken care of their land, right? And we did it right alongside the hunter and the hiker and the fisher. And in fact, like what my dad does in Nevada, because of all those waters and water troughs that I explained to you, man, we have quail and pheasant and deer and coyotes and rabbits. And it's the best place to camp because there's water there. And So when you combined man using the land with appropriately, right, responsibly, let's say when you combine that with people enjoying it, if you do it in the correct way where everybody's responsible, because you don't want a hunter shooting the water tanks, right? And you don't want the rancher closing the gate and putting a thank you. If you're heading out, thank you so much. Take care, buddy. I know I'm hard to listen to. I don't blame you. So that's what we're proposing. And the administration of that will be done at the county level. So the people are the ones who decide. It's the way it has to be.
And exactly, I mean, a lot of people don't know. I mean, especially the younger folks don't know that, and you say county. This school funding tax came from timber dollars. I mean, and minerals and stuff. But when they take that away from you, where, and you try getting that out to people, where do you think they're gonna get it from? Your wall.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know what he just, in a few sentences, explained, right? But how was the state, all the United States set up? You know, because pretty much all the states copied the same thing. So how was it designed to take care of education funds? Take care of education funds. Anybody know? Well, they cut the state up and they put lines into sections, 640 acre sections, right? They made a squares out of all. You can look at the map, they're all squares, right? And then I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think every 10th section was designated for school land. They were called school trust lands, and right, you remember those terms? Only the older people remember those terms, and I'm not offending you, right? What's that?
They taught us in school, and yes, I know.
That's right. And now, and so the forest, the grazing, the minerals that were on those sections were supposed to fund schools. And it wasn't until what happened, you know, well, that's a lot of work, right? And the environmentalists like, we have to stop this because this is land welfare, they call it, or earth welfare. That's what they call it. We have to stop this. Well, you know, schools are moving forward, and so and it was a lot of work, you know, and they, rather than working for it, the state says, why don't we just tax the people on their private property? So then in the early 1900s, they implemented a Marxist idea called property tax. A communist idea called property tax. And then they're like, well, this is how we'll fund, and then we can grow and make it big, and it's easy, and we just take the people, and you know, if they don't pay us, then we'll just take their property. Right? And that's how they did it. And then, so now, what happens to most of our school lands? They just lay waste.
Oh, yeah.
They don't do anything with it. They don't even let you overnight camp on it. Literally.
Yeah, it's just school sections out there going to what?
They're just out there with beautiful sections. We were just on one of them. That was one of them. Maybe that we were on the other day. Beautiful big sections of 640 acres just primed for some type of use to create and generate revenue for the schools. So the people don't have to take it out of their hard-earned money or lose their homes if they can't pay it. Okay? These were the things that were in place before we become communistic, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, this gentleman understands that. You're exactly right. You know. Thank you. Okay, what time is it? I gotta end sometime. Well, I'll answer like one or two more questions, and we'll kind of wrap this up, and then go from there. So here and then here. Then was there somebody else? Okay, right here.
I had more if you had left.
Oh.
I got like a rapid fire three-way, but I'm gonna touch on something that you and I both have in common. The justice system loves to, it was, how did I put it? Guilty until proven innocent. That's not how this country was founded. A, how would you fix that? Part one. Two, why do we need property tax and all this other stuff when the lotteries and all this stuff is, I thought that's supposed to go to public schools. And There you go, taxation is theft.
All right, so, innocent until proven.
No, guilty until proven innocent.
I was gonna say the opposite, but I wanna make sure I got it right, I have to, yeah, so. But we have a system where you're guilty and, until you're proven innocent, and that's what we become. But it's right along the same things of what I was talking about earlier, about a system of restitution versus a system of incarceration. And, we already have the kind of the processes in place, right? Well, what happens is and I know this, when I was fighting and battling in 2020, I got arrested 6 times, yeah, 6 times in 2020, I think, in 2021, the very beginning of it, for basically standing against all that they were doing, and they just didn't like the light that I was shown on them.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, I was exposing them big time, and they were not liking it. So they, if you can get an arrest, then people think, oh, all of a sudden that person did something wrong, right? I spent 65 hours in Ada County Jail in the cold boxes. It was pretty miserable, and I didn't even in my trial for the trespassing at the Capitol building. Imagine that,
Yeah.
right? About the people's house, right? Well, in my trial, every officer that was involved and any other official that was involved said that I broke no rules.
They were
Right?
just following orders.
That I broke no rules. They were just told, and they said then ultimately what they ended up resolving on was that, well, the Speaker of the House can tell anybody to leave. Right? Even though he didn't break any rules, even though he didn't do anything disruptive, which the media lied again about what happened there, for breaking rules. But so what did they do in that situation? They arrested me, put me in jail, and I was in jail over these periods of times up to 65 hours. Well, where was the innocent until proven guilty there? Like, okay, so charge me, right? Remove me from the property if you think you have to. But why was there jail involved in that? Before I was convicted, or a jury would convict me, right? What's the process here? We just have to stop that. Okay, we have the mechanism, what I meant to say. Like, okay, I'm going to give you a ticket, and you have to show up and be summoned to court, right? But what's up with I'm going to arrest you, put handcuffs on you, put me in your car, and then put you in jail for, hours or days. Until you bail yourself out, right, with money. And then, I mean, what's up with all of this?
We've let it happen.
It's a waste of money.
So they arrested you, put you in jail because you broke a rule.
No, because I didn't break a rule.
Well, they said you broke the rules.
Correct.
But
No,
we
no.
don't follow rules, we follow law.
Well, you're exactly right.
Law is, mandates aren't laws, they're recommendations.
They actually didn't say I broke any rules. They only said the Speaker of the House said that I had to leave, and he has the authority to say that. Doesn't matter if I'm breaking any rules or nothing. So think about that. Any one of you could go into the Capitol building, and you could, start to, be peacefully and respectively put, attention on maybe something that's going on at the Capitol building, and the Speaker of the House is like, we don't like that attention. I don't want her here, arrest her.
So we have some of that going on.
Like,
in this
you
town.
don't have to, they fully admitted I broke no rules. Right? No laws or rules.
Because they can only arrest you and detain you for unlawful law, or
Yeah,
unlawful.
and that's where we're at. That's where we're at. And that's the cronyism, corruption that the perverted Republican people are where they're at, right? And anyway, I won't get too much detail into that, but I understand what you're saying. I understand the problem, and we have to fix it.
And it's not just
Right?
at the bureaucracy level, it's
right.
at the Goonie level as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dina,
Yeah.
but
So,
like,
Don't tell me sorry.
it's not the judges and everything, because actually the judge during mine was actually kind of pissed off that both the county and the state, or the county and the city charged me for the same flippin' crime. And there was 2 court cases, and they almost denied me bail because,
Oh, the prosecutor was like, well, he's got previous,
Right,
it happened at the same time, why is this way?
no, it's because the cops can't pull their head out of their butts long enough to breathe to make a common thought. They're just like, oh, we're gonna slap cuffs on you, she's crying, there's no evidence in what she says, but we're gonna throw you in jail and like for a week until you can make bail, and then we're gonna drag it out for a year and a half.
that's exactly right. And it happens every hundreds and thousands of times a day with hundreds of, or thousands of people. And it's an injustice. And so I'm gonna,
Let me follow up on
Yeah.
like what he was saying, with all of that, you were arrested and didn't even do anything. I happen to be a big mouth when it comes to our mayor, my ex-husband and the mayor, and,
well, that's quite a combination.
yeah. Well, they're not the same person.
Okay.
So they have the same personality. But, we were at a council meeting where the mayor was unlawfully vote himself onto a library board, blah, blah, blah. Well, I got tired of hearing the bullshit, and I stood up quieter than this, and just said, I've had enough of this crap, I'm out of here, but I pointed at all the council members and the mayors, and I said, this is wrong, and you all know it, and I left. Well, that turned into, people downtown supposedly, I'm crazy, and I was gonna come back with a gun and shoot them all. So, what do you, this is what you go through. You go through that, I've been going through it, my own daughter is like, Mom, everybody in town thinks you're crazy, blah, blah, and I'm like, you know what, I don't give a rat's ass what they
Right.
think.
Yeah, that's what it's
But
gonna
that's
take.
how easily they turn on you.
Well, there's a line here.
But it comes up through the justice system. As a governor, you have control over the justice system
The
for the
Department-
whole
Yeah.
state.
The Department of Justice falls under the executive branch, and the governor is the head of the executive branch. That's correct. There's a
Unless
lot-
you leave town.
Yeah.
State,
I'm
gotta
gonna-
be state.
Oh, state,
Yeah,
yeah,
the
state,
state.
sorry.
Yeah,
That's
so
my
I'm
bad.
going to, cause we have to wrap this up, so I wanna read something here. This is called the Declaration of Independence, you all know it, right? It's at the very last line. Let me find it here, it's pretty small writing. It says, where is it? Okay, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Right? They were willing and knew that even their reputation was something that they had to be willing to give up their sacred honor. They had to be willing to give up in order for freedom, in order for liberty, right? And so even at that cost, we have to be willing to make that. So I'm going to end there, and thank you for your time, everybody. What's that? Oh, one minute.
Did you know that the majority of the gentlemen who signed the Declaration of Independence gave everything, their lives, their fortunes,
Properties.
they died poor, homeless, and were being tracked as criminals.
Yes, yes, too.
And many of them had like sons. I remember reading about how many of them like lost their children, and so they paid a heavy price. Because
They were marked as
freedom
traitors.
is not free.
It is not free.
It's absolutely not free.
Ammon, tell them about your special pen. I think that will answer the question of this on
Oh, yeah.
injustice.
Yeah, Wendy's getting good at hearing me. So as governor, there is something that like the president also has, which is a pardoning power. And I'm gonna have on my desk, I'm gonna have a pen that says pardon on it. And it's gonna be red hot. Because it's one of the ways that our founders have given us to check and balance the judicial branch. And, I mean, we have a tremendous amount of people in Idaho, all over, in Idaho, that are not criminals, that are being punished and oppressed by the state. And if you can't you want to be able to correct it in the long run, right? So it doesn't keep happening. But one of the ways you get them to stop doing it in the short term, you just say, look, you're going to try to prosecute people who are going into public meetings and voicing their, voicing themselves respectfully. If you're going to try to, prosecute them because they didn't have a man-made filter over their face, well, guess what I'm going to be doing with my pen, right? I'm going to be pardoning them. I'm going to be protecting the people's liberty with my pardoning pen. Cool. And that's what needs to happen. All right, there's lots of sandwiches up here, lots of cookies, so thank you very much.
Who's your pick for Lieutenant Governor?